here Sally Lloyd Jones, who is the author of many children's books, including Old McNoah Had an Ark, The Ultimate Guide to Grandmothers and Grandpas, Little One We Knew You'd Come, just a few of them. Most notably, the Jesus Story of the Bible. Are you familiar with that? We'll be holding up later on some copies of the book. The Jesus Story of the Bible came out in March 2007, right? So not quite 2 years. It is a wonderful story with one hero, God, and that's very different from many children's Bible story books, which have lots of heroes, Abraham and Moses and David and Samson and all that. But sometimes they become nice little moral tales, and you miss the arc. And I highly recommend the Jesus Story of the Bible, not just for little kids, but for big kids, for old people, for everything. Because if you want to get a sense of the arc of the story, there's really nothing better than to see how from creation through fall to redemption, God's the hero all the way. And it's one of these wonderful instances where you have a work of great art and biblical fidelity that also sells like crazy, namely maybe up to 150,000 copies sold at this point in less than 2 years, fewer than 2 years. And that arc is continuing. It has legs, as they say in the publishing industry. It'll probably keep selling year after year after year. Lots of, if you know anyone who is getting married, someone who's pregnant, it is a great gift. And we'll get into some stories of how God has used that. But let me go from Sublime to something else, because Sally has a blog. She has a website which is SallyLloydJones.com, right? And there's also a Blogspot blog. And I noticed on the blog that Sally, right up there, if you look at Blogspot, Sally was celebrating the 50th anniversary of Barbie dolls. That is coming in March. 50 years. And
she's 50.
She's 50 and doesn't look it.
No, not at all. Amazing, really.
It's incredible what the plastic surgery. So, why Barbie dolls? Did you grow up with them, and did they?
No, I never had a Barbie. I had a Tressie doll.
Tressie
I don't know if anyone else had a Tressie. They were kind of creepy. The thing about Tressie, the name Tressie, I realized only this week when I was doing the Barbie thing. I realized the name is because of her wonderful tresses. Okay. And the whole point of Tressie was that her hair grew, but it only grew out of one tunnel on her head. So a great tunnel of hair would come out and then go back in. But our one, it got stuck out, so she just went around with this great, horrible sort of horse's tail on her head.
This was a doll to scare children? Or?
This was, I think they were cheaper than Barbies, and I think we got the cheaper Tressie.
So quality really counts.
Yeah. So but I wasn't really very much of a Barbie sort of girl. I was more intrigued in riding horses and stuff. So.
And what then helped you to become an imaginative person, a creative person? Is there something in growing up that
I don't really know. I'm told I never would be paying attention. I used to dream and come. And in church, all the children would have, they do this still, don't they? You have the children all stand up front, and you can always see the children who are paying attention and really singing and joining in, and then there's the others that are going, and that was me. So I think my sister was the one doing all the singing. So I think I always was off in another world, and I don't really know why, but that's what I was like.
Okay. So then jumping ahead to what was really the key aspect of life coming to New York City.
Yes.
Basically, 20 years ago. You came with plans just to be here briefly.
Yes.
And what happened then?
Well, it first of all goes to show you what you know, you don't know. And I saw a job advertised in the bookseller in London, and it described the kind of job I was doing, and I thought, oh, that would be an adventure. And I suppose one of the things I've always had is a sense that I want my life to be like an adventure. And I guess I was ready for an adventure, and I thought, well, I could go for a year, that's nothing wrong with that. And I was at the time thinking, probably not a good career move, I probably should just be in London, which of course is so insane, you know, it's just that narrow thinking you get into that the place you are, you can't leave it, you know. So anyway, I realised the thing that made me decide was the reason not to go would be fear, and I thought, well, there's no reason, fear is the reason. And then I also imagined myself years later saying to some grandchildren or something, you know, I nearly went to America. And that was the story. And then I thought, oh, that's awful. At least I can go, if it's awful, I can say, and it didn't work out, and I came back. But after a year of being in America, I just thought, oh, well, I'm having too much fun. I had great friends and a great church, and I just kept staying.
So that's a common denominator. Those of you who have come to a number of these, I think you were probably a person who interviewed this academic here, and no one has 5-year plans or 10-year plans or 30-year or 40-year career. None of the people we've interviewed, I don't know that I can think of. People had interests, people had inclinations maybe, but what people had most of all was a desire for adventure. And see what happens.
Yeah.
So you think your job was as a packager?
Yes, I worked.
What is a packager?
A packager is when a publisher who distributes the books and puts their name on the line of the books, it has a list, and they're thinking, we need more pop-up books, but we don't have to do pop-up books. Of course, this isn't really what happens now, but anyway. And a packager would be someone who would know exactly how to do pop-up books, because they would have sourced it in the Far East, they would know all the ins and outs of how to do a pop-up book. So the packager is an easy way for a publisher to bring in a type of format into their list, or a type of book. You know, it happens also with, say, you want to do a photography book and you're not really a photography kind of publisher, you could go to a photography packager and they would provide it. And so the packager does everything short of distributing the book. So you wouldn't know the packager did it, except if you look in the copyright and it will say the packager name.
But
So
the basic decision is, here's the type of package we want. We want a pop-up book.
Yeah.
So it's not that someone has a particular
No.
idea or something
No.
like that. It's just the
Yeah, you sort of start with the format, and you would then take the format to a publisher, and the publisher would then buy a quantity at a certain price. So it's like you're selling socks or something.
right.
So you've made up this dummy so it looks like a book, and you're showing it, and then they say, yes, we'd like 25,000 of that, we need it by December, and you've got 9 months to do it. So the difference of the packager, at least when I was working, was it was really nice and crazy like a magazine, as opposed to a publisher. And the people I worked for were geniuses, but terrible, frightening. And I would say that to I'm still friends, but they were geniuses, but really scary to work for. And I just would work really hard, and but it was a great training in how publishing works, and very much fun, and really never boring.
So in a sense, commodity rather than creativity, but still very useful. In that aspect of things that most writers would never be exposed to.
And in funny ways, as a packager, you are more creative, isn't it? If you're an editor in a packager, you've probably got more. You can end up writing the book. You can end up devising the format. Like I'm talking about children's books, obviously. So, as an editor in packaging, I could say, wouldn't it be great if a book had a handle on it, like that, a plastic handle? And what could the book with a handle be? Well, it could be a bag. It could be. And what we ended up doing was a Bible, because I was thinking, me and my boss thinking, you know how adults go around, some adults go around with Bible holders, and I thought, often it's good to look at what adults do because children want to copy. You notice children pushing their strollers around and stuff. So we thought, well, what about putting a handle on a Bible for children, and then they could carry their own Bible to church, and that became the baby's first Bible, which was sold millions of copies. So it's that kind. So you can be very creative, and it gets you thinking of the book, not just the words. You're thinking of the whole thing. You're thinking of how the book runs, how many pages, how the illustrations work, the physical aspects of the book paper. So it's actually really helpful.
So you're before. I mean,
Yeah.
You're a producer, director, screenwriter.
Got a lot of control, which is pretty hard. As I transitioned out of that, I didn't have the control anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You went to work at Reader's Digest, and
actually, Reader's Digest took us over. So
they took you over, and then you had the thrill and happiness of having the division tax.
Yeah, I was the head of the Christian children's book line, and it was wonderful because I had control over the department, and we could produce these lovely Christian books, but we were in a secular publisher, so it was the best of both worlds. And we had a great team, and then they were doing 40% cutbacks.
In the year 2000?
2000. And for some reason, I just knew I was on that list, even though I was praying against it, because I didn't, you know, it was scary. I didn't want to be. Even though I didn't love it, because it had become very corporate, and I was in less of what I really loved. I was feeling very excited, but you get caught up with attention, and, you know, healthcare, and the check every month, and you can't imagine that stopping. So all my prayers at the time were, Lord, please don't let the numbers of bad advertising stay. I'm not on that list. Don't make me on that list. Please don't make me on that list. And as I was sharing earlier, when, you know, people often say, if you knew everything about what God's up to in your life, you would cheer him on. Now that's so true, because now, 8 years on, I look back and I think, well, 9 years on, I look back and I think, thank goodness he didn't answer my prayer, and he did what he was planning to do, which was get me out of there. Because that was the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the time, I couldn't see it. So I often think back to that as such an encouragement to, and to anyone here who's facing whatever it is that you don't understand what's doing in your life, to really think, if I knew everything about what God knows, about what he's doing, I would cheer him on, and I love that.
And you can only see the arc of your own life after it happens. Yeah. So suddenly you are out of work, and rather than full of despair at that point, you actually have the opportunity to do something. And what do you do?
Well, I was lucky to have an outplacement for 6 months, where you have an office to go to and people to, you know, copy the machines and stuff. And at that point, I thought, well, I could keep doing packaging, but I'll be a sub-packager. And a sub-packager is someone who does everything short of print the book. So you're not a full packager. You don't take the big financial risk of printing the book, but you deliver mechanicals or, you know, digital files, and then the publisher prints it. So that was a ready-made thing I could do, and I had a niche. And right now it's different. It's changed. I wouldn't be able to do it, but right then it was good. And so I kept doing Christian children's books for publishers that I worked with. And I did that, but in the back of my mind I was thinking, but I'd love to write, but I'll never make a living writing. So I'll just, you know, I'll do the packaging and I'll write these things. So I kept doing that. And then as I was working on one particular book, it was a bedtime book, I thought, I was writing a text and I thought, oh wait a minute, this text is quite good. Not that I was doing bad text, but it was good enough that it didn't have to be in a flat book. It could stand on its own. I thought, I'm going to save that to do in a picture book. And I started thinking like that. And then I invited a friend who's an illustrator to come to New York, and they, for some reason, just said, why don't you come and we can come up with an idea for a book? Because I thought, you know, that would be something. I could start trying to see if I could get some writing. And we came up with this book, which you can see where, you know, I had that Bible with a hand on it, right? So I thought about, I was still in the novelty frame of mind. This kind of book is a novelty book, because it's got this unusual stuff. So, and I'd noticed my niece, Olivia, was walking around with handbags wherever she went. She had a handbag. Even when she was playing horrible battles with her brother, you know, going into the trenches, she was carrying a pink handbag. And I just thought, well, that's so, and I was so not like that. I was not a girly girl, and she's so girly. And I said to her, Olivia, what do you keep in your handbag? And she looked at me like I was the most insane person. She said, my friends. And then she opened up her bag, and she had a purple troll, a strange knitted green creature, and all these weird, and then plastic carrot, and then something, and this is something I've learned as a writer, is the thing, something about that got my heart, you know, it made me laugh, but it also moved me in a weird way. So I've learned over the years to listen to that, because that's usually the very thing I should be writing about. And I've always assumed, oh, that would make everyone feel that way. But I've realized, you know, just as I have a friend who writes about older people, and he talks about things that I don't register, but he does. And when we compare notes, we realize we're responding to different things, and that's the point. We're supposed to respond to the thing we respond to. So anyway, I noticed that, and when my friend Sue came over, we talked about handbags, what could we put in a handbag, and because I was in this novelty frame of mind, we just made it into a board book, so it was just going to be like 6 spreads, and it was going to be, and I was trying not to write a story because I was so sure I couldn't write. So we made this novelty book, just board book, and we took it to the publisher and said, well, I love this idea, but we really need a story. And then I turned deathly pale, because I thought, oh no, right, okay, now we're going to find out, I can't write. Because what I haven't said is that's what I really want to do.
And why did you think these were?
Because I imagined that to be a writer was way up there. I didn't even know. I just assumed assumed I couldn't do it. And the publisher said something that was so helpful. He said, well, we could get someone else. And I said, no. So I thought, well, I can't give it away. I've got to try. And he said, just write what makes you laugh. And I thought, you're allowed to do that? You're allowed to just make people laugh? Because I had thought writing a children's book was something out here, and I didn't realise that I could just write what was close to me. And I think that's another thing to show you, to encourage you, is that the thing that comes naturally to you is so close to you, you can't even see it. So the danger is you discount it. You think, well, that's easy, everyone can do that. It's not true. And that was very helpful to me, to realise I just have to make people laugh. And I knew that the first line, well, I don't even use this line, but I knew that the line in the book would be, once upon a time there were no handbags. It was terrible. People of the land had nowhere to carry their things. It's just nonsense, but it made me laugh. And so, and then we created a whole, now it's an adventure storybook about these little friends, the handbag friends, who go on adventure and dress with a baby handbag that would be captured by the terrible bad handbag. It's completely, someone said they thought I was on the drugs. And they rescued the really bad handbag, and I didn't know what her name was until I was writing her. And her name, of course, is Clark. And then she is, what a glory, look. How pimply and puffy and horrible. Anyway, this is really my first book, and I was fortunate enough to work with a publisher who let you just be really creative, and it was such fun. And I collaborated with the illustrator, and it was a blast. So as I was working on the subpackaging, I started doing stuff like this, and then the subpackaging started drying up, and that was like dreadful, because I'm like, but how am I going to make a living? Meanwhile, I am sort of getting texts accepted, but I'm totally not looking at it. I'm like, I have to make a living over here, because this is how I make a living. And then I realised after, how long does it take us to be bashing our heads, and I thought, after about a year of this, perhaps I'm not supposed to be doing that. Perhaps I'm supposed to just be writing. But the leap between doing that and then writing meant that I had to be prepared not to have much money for a long time and not have any income. And that was tricky. But I had savings, and I knew, someone said to me, what you're doing is you're investing in yourself. You're investing in your future, and you believe in, you're writing a book, it may not earn any money for 4 or 5 years, but it's what you're doing when you're able. Instead of thinking I'm going down the slippery slope and using the savings I'm with people, I was thinking I'm investing in myself. So lots of tricks in your head you have to do, I think.
So you're trying to get confidence as a writer, and you did some writing in the New York Public Library, in the big room up there with the gorgeous
highlights. I kept trying to find, to get out, so you're not in your apartment all the time. So I thought, well, wait till you get to the library, don't you? So I go to the library, and I'm sitting there, okay, I'm writing now. And I'm looking around, and there are these people with huge manuscripts, and they're looking really clever, and I'm thinking, they're writing a really good novel. What am I doing? I'm not writing a novel. Why aren't I writing a novel? Mine's not any. I saw that whole thing, and I realised then libraries aren't good for me. So then I realised I have to pretend that I'm playing. I can't be thinking I'm writing some novel. So I then decided the better place for me is a coffee shop where I can have headphones on and coffee, and other people are just doing the same thing. They're all on their laptops, and the younger energy and not so stuffy. So for me, I started to learn what works and what doesn't, and try not to make rules for myself.
When you blog on classical music, the particular selection, does that work for you when you're writing, or? Yeah.
Well, sometimes I get when I'm doing a picture book. These kind of picture books.
Tell us about that book.
Okay, this one, How to Be a Baby by Me, the Big Sister. This one, this was inspired. I was at a school, and I saw a little thing up on the wall, and it was something that, like, when you're a baby, it was total non sequitur, like you are in a crib and not in school. I thought, that's so strange and wonderful, and so I wrote it down, and the whole book, that's how the book starts. And it's basically a big instruction manual on how you're not very good when you're a baby. So when you're a baby, you are in a cot and not in school. Well, actually, this is the English version. When you're a baby, you're in a crib and not in school. When you're a baby, you just wear your pajamas all the time and not real clothes. Well, your mummy and daddy have to dress you because you don't know how. But I do. When you're a baby, it's not good because you don't have any hair. I have long hair like a princess. When you're a baby, you don't read books. You eat them. And you don't understand TV. People talk to you, but you don't know what it means. You talk, but no one knows what you're saying because you just make it all up. You sing songs, but you don't know the words or the tune. I know the words and the tune and the dance. So it goes on.
No, you can't simply walk.
When you're a baby, you don't carry a backpack. You go in one. And you can only sit, you can't stand or walk or go anywhere. People have to carry you everywhere. This is you being carried everywhere. Here's what else you can't do. Run or hop or skip or swim. Ride a bike without stabilizers, training wheels. Ride a bike with training wheels. Climb on the monkey bars all by yourself. Bounce on the trampoline, it's so easy. Use scissors. Be a princess, a fairy or a mermaid. Actually, anything really fun. When you're a baby, your mummy and daddy have to feed you because you don't know how. You don't have any teeth at all. You can't eat normal food, you can only eat yucky baby food. Here's what else you can't eat. Pizza, chocolate ice cream, chocolate cake, anything good. When you're a baby, you are scared of your potty. Here's what else you're scared of. The sea, Granny's shiny black shoes, Father Christmas, big head, actually lots of not scary things at all. When you're a baby, you are called pumpkin, sweetie, dumpling, pudding, and people say, I could eat you all up. But your real name is, if you could write, which you can't, you would put your name in there. When you're a baby, you are very small. People can hold you in their hands even, like a frog. This is you in someone's hand. Teeny weeny, incy wincy, tiny baby. When you're a baby, you are a different shape. You are round. But then you get bigger, and your legs stretch out, and your tummy gets long, so you don't look so fat with a big balloon with a big belly button sticking out. When you're a baby, you don't know how old you are, or where you live, or even if you're a boy or a girl. Here's what else you don't know. 2 times 2 equals 4, and there are only 28 days in February. The opposite of up is down, the opposite of big is little, the opposite of you can do a handstand is you can't do a handstand. Don't know any secrets, any jokes, how to make a snowman, anything. When you're a baby, baths are not nice, they are very dangerous. Because you are too slippery, so someone has to watch you all the time. This is me staying in the bath as long as I want, all by myself. When you're a baby, it's not good because the wind can blow you over. When you're a baby, people eat your ice cream for you because ice cream isn't appropriate for babies. And you're not allowed to touch anything. And a special plug goes in your mouth. It's called a dummy, a pacifier. It's to stop your scream coming out. When you're a baby, you don't sit in a chair, you are tied to it. Or you fall off and bump your head and scream and have to go to bed. And when you go in the car, you have to sit in a car seat with a handle on it. You don't even face the right way. Facing the wrong way, facing the right way. I prefer to sit in a seat like a normal person. When you're a baby, you have boring toys like rattles the bricks. Here's what toys you don't have and you're not allowed to play with. My bike, my rollerblades, my Game Boy, my Playmobiles because you might eat them. My ballerina music box and all of my dolls. When you're a baby, you don't have good manners at all. You pull other people's glasses off and grab their noses and spit your food on them. Here's what else you do that's illegal. You open other people's presents, knock other people's castles over, tear pages out of other people's favourite books, and scribble in them, draw on the walls, poo on the carpet, and other naughty things like that. Cats don't like you because you pull their tails and stroke their fur the wrong way. And sometimes, if you're very naughty, you're put in prison. You're in prison. When you're a baby, you don't have any real friends. Emily, Andrew, Sarah, Daniel, Molly, Olivia, Thomas. All babies' friends. And when you're a baby, you have to have the light on all night or you get scared. And you're not allowed to have any pillows in your bed. And in the middle of the night, you wake everyone up because you cry really loudly and give me a headache. And that's when I come in and whisper to you and kiss you and tell you, don't worry, baby dumpling, it's just a scary dream. And then you feel better. When you're a baby, hug you and kiss you all the time. Babies are good at hugging, but they can't kiss because they don't know how their mouths work. Here's what else babies are good at: burping, peeing, pooing, crying and screaming, sleeping, making a mess. It's sometimes nice being a baby because people don't say, stop being a baby, because you are a baby. And you can't help it, so it's not your fault. And people smile at you because you're so small. And sometimes you're funny and make me laugh. When you get big, you won't be a baby anymore, but your mummy will still carry you if you're tired, and your daddy will still sing songs to you if you can't sleep. And I will still let you hold my hand when you're afraid, because you will still be a little bit. Here's what else I'll let you do. Follow me, copy me, play with my friends sometimes, sit in my thoughts and have secrets together, learn everything from me so you can be as clever and good at everything as me. Almost. And one day you'll be as tall as me. And then I'll say, remember when you were little? Remember how you used to never be able to do anything? Remember? And we'll laugh and point at pictures of you in the olden days when you were a baby. Thank you, Julie.
That's, I can see the pictures, a lot of people here can see pictures. It's really the words that carry humor.
Mm-hmm. It's like writing jokes, really.
So no writers take this question.
Yeah.
But how do you do it? I mean, Frank Capra, who made these wonderful movies in the 1930s and 1940s, Comedies, Minutes, A Wonderful Life, used to say that when they had a rough cut, I mean, they'd show it to see reactions to it, and they would actually tape the reactions and listen to the laughter and see. And sometimes if it wasn't laughter, they would just cut that. If it wasn't a lot of laughter, so it was burying the next line. They would put something extra in there and so forth. So he was really trying to do that. And he didn't see it in position the way some authors rest would be. He saw that this was very useful information.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, you wrote this. Did you try it out on people?
Yeah.
And so forth?
And I probably, it went through probably about 22 revisions.
Right.
And it's about, I think the first draft, you can't be editing the first draft. You've got to let it all come out. Because if you've got the editor and the writer are two different people, you have to kind of be schizophrenic. But you've got to protect the writer from this editor person. Because when the editor comes in and says, that's not funny, you've got to cut that far too long, you can't have that, then you don't even give it a chance. But you let it all out and it's too long, and you know it's too long, and then that's when I try and revise it and test it out on certain friends who, if I read it to them and they laugh, I know it's good. And if they don't, then I kind of worry that it's not coming across. And then I work with a very good editor who constantly pushes you to do better. And I think when I first wrote this book, I was so worried because I came from publishing. I was worrying about spreads and number of pages. And this is actually a long picture book. It's 40 pages. Well, I was thinking it's got to be 24. So I was stuck in this rigid thing. She had to just forget about that and just go for it and make it add stuff to it and let you go. So I think the key is to let yourself go, and everyone needs an editor because they get you to do your best work. But you have to be careful that you're not just like if they say to you, do this, that you don't just do that. You listen to what they're saying. You've got to think, is that the voice of the girl? Because the editor will rewrite it and it won't sound right. So you've got to do what they're saying, but maybe not always do what they're saying, but if you agree.
You want something, I gather, that likes children and also like adults.
Yeah.
So you have these two different audiences and so forth.
And the danger with children's books that I see is there are a lot of children's books, I think, that are adults' idea of what children will like. Right. Yeah. And I don't like those books because I don't think they're really for children. Children, obviously, they're being bought for children, so children have them. Right. But I think sometimes they're not really on the child's level. They're not really looking at the child eye to eye. They're looking down on the child, thinking, oh, a child probably would like that. But I think very, very important to be right on the same level. And there are differences between a book that lives and a book that doesn't live. You mentioned My Family. That's such an amazing living book.
How many of you
know that?
know about My Family?
Amazing. Genius.
So you test drove that with children also.
Yeah.
And saw their reactions.
Yeah. I especially tested this one because I had the trouble is, see, I can't really test. Well, I did. Right now, you didn't see the pictures and you were laughing, but for children to test it, I really need the pictures. So it's a bit more tricky because I'm having to finish the manuscript before the pictures.
Right.
So that's a little tricky. But when you know the illustrator, you can then really test it out. And the other thing about a picture book that's wonderful is you have to get rid of your ego. Well, you have to get rid of your ego, I think, to write well anyway. That doesn't always seem that way, does it? But
especially then.
Especially when you're working with another. I mean, I'm sure this is true of plays and stuff. But with an illustrator on a book like this, if I was sticking, I had to keep all my words, saying I had more words than that on this spread. If I was resisting cutting anything, then the pictures would be smaller,
right.
And then really the child would suffer, and the whole book would suffer. So you kind of have to get to the point where you're thinking, what's more important, the book or my words? And if you can get to the point where you obviously got to be careful that you're doing the right thing, but the book has to come first and the story has to come first, then you're going to be more generous and the book will be better because you're doing it for the reader as opposed to just indulging yourself, you know?
And so again, this is all these twists and turns you took on the way you're coming away. It sounds like they were very helpful because you started to understand audiences and marketing and all that aspect.
Yeah.
So how do you write now? I mean, you're sometimes in coffee shops, sometimes you write at home?
Yeah.
So what's your home environment like for writing?
I have a one-bedroom and I have a big old English desk that when you come into the apartment you don't see it. My interior design friend recommended that you do it the minute you come into your work, that you should have it hidden away. So you don't see it immediately, but it's in this lovely English desk. So I just have the corner of my room, and I put on the wall things that inspire me, like pictures of my nieces and nephews. Anything that I find, like I've got a picture of the Angelus by Millet, because it's showing two workers who stop work, they're praying over a flower field. And I have it on my desk, which is postcard, it's not a real thing. Like I've got it on my desk because I'm thinking that's really what my work is. I'm just like a farmer praying over seeds. And it's not up to me. And even like with a picture book, it's sort of like a seed. And it will grow. It's like a poem. It will grow. But it's got to be expressed, and I just have to keep showing up. And so things like that inspire me and keep me remembering what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. You know, you can get distracted with whatever numbers, sales figures, the bestseller list, and you can start thinking that's what you're about. And for me, the best thing when I remember, I'm only supposed to be writing what I'm meant to be writing, and I'm doing it for children. It sounds a bit cheesy, like you know, but it's really true. And that God's given me a gift that I need to be a steward of, and that is always. Tim Keller was talking about this yesterday about our work is for human flourishing, and I was thinking that's really helpful because if I can keep in mind that, and all of our work is for human flourishing, then it will stop us looking to our work to give us status or whatever. We can turn work into something that's not so great and can become a curse and a tyranny. But if I'm looking at work as a way to bless, and my ministry is to children, so for children's flourishing, then that can help me give the right priorities.
Right. I remember that from Tim Keller is the pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian Church here in Manhattan. And you were setting upstairs that it was actually that the teaching was very useful for you in developing the historic Bible, which we now have a copy. And the intelligent, lovely Susan Olasky is going to bring it here to the front.
Our lovely assistant is being That's very...
I'm Vanna White.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So this is
No, and tell us how because sometimes we might think, well, there's church and there's work, but tell us how one led to that.
Yeah. Well, I've been at Redeemer with Tim Keller's ministry for a long time, 15 years, I think. And if you know his ministry and his teaching, it's always pointing to Jesus. Every story, even if you're in the New Testament, is always pointing to Jesus. And this book basically captures the plot line of the Bible, and there's one hero. Like you might think, it's one hero. It's not about lots of different stories. It's about one story, and all the stories are telling us the one story. So it's about, in fact, shall I read?
Please read.
The introduction kind of says it, but it's a book that obviously is for children, but it's breaking out of the mold, which I love, and I'm kind of not surprised that God would do that. But this book is becoming a way that people can share the gospel with people who don't really know it by giving the book to them, or couples are using it as a devotional. I even heard that Sarah Groves and Andrew Peterson have been using it in their concerts. So it's very cool what's happening here. So this is the introduction, and it's called The Story and the Song, from Psalm 19 in Hebrews 1. The heavens are singing about how great God is, and the skies are shouting out, see what God has made. Day after day, night after night, they are speaking to us. Psalm 19, 1-2, paraphrase. God wrote, I love you. He wrote it in the sky, and on the earth, and under the sea. He wrote his message everywhere, because God created everything in his world to reflect him like a mirror, to show us what he's like, to help us know him, to make our hearts sing. The way a kitten chases her tail, the way red poppies grow wild, the way a dolphin swims. And God put it into words too, and wrote it in a book called the Bible. We've got no noises. Now some people think the Bible is a book of rules, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. The Bible certainly does have some rules in it. They show you how life works best. But the Bible isn't mainly about you and what you should be doing. It's about God and what he's done. Other people think the Bible is a book of heroes, showing you people you should copy. The Bible does have some heroes in it, but as you'll soon find out, most of the people in the Bible aren't heroes at all. They make some big mistakes, sometimes on purpose. They get afraid and run away. At times, they're downright mean. No, the Bible isn't a book of rules or a book of heroes. The Bible is most of all a story. It's an adventure story about a young hero who comes from a far country to win back his lost treasure. It's a love story about a brave prince who leaves his palace, his throne, everything, to rescue the one he loves. It's like the most wonderful of fairy tales that has come true in real life. You see, the best thing about this story is it's true. There are lots of stories in the Bible, but all the stories are telling one big story, the story of how God loves his children and comes to rescue them. It takes the whole Bible to tell this story, and at the center of the story there is a baby. Every story in the Bible whispers his name. He is like the missing piece in a puzzle, the piece that makes all the other pieces fit together, and suddenly you can see a beautiful picture. And this is no ordinary baby. This is the child upon whom everything would depend. This is the child who would one day, but wait, our story starts where all good stories start, right at the very beginning. Go to the creation. So basically the story, at the end of every story, I tie it in, I sort of point, because I'm trying to point, set up, there's that baby. So every story is now preparing for the coming of this rescue. And we tell the story, you have the fall, you have the creation where everything is perfect, God's made the most beautiful homes for Adam and Eve. God saw all that he had made, and he loved them. And they were lovely because he loved them. But God saved the best for last. From the beginning, God had a shining dream in his heart. He would make people to share his forever happiness. They would be his children, and the world would be their perfect home. So God breathed life into Adam and Eve. When they opened their eyes, the first thing they ever saw was God's face. And when God saw them, he was like a new dad. You look like me, he said. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever made. God loved them with all of his heart, and they were lovely because he loved them. And Adam and Eve joined in the song of the stars and the streams and the wind and the trees, the wonderful song of love, the one who made them. Their hearts were filled with happiness, and nothing ever made them sad or lonely or sick or afraid. God looked at everything he had made. Perfect, he said, and it was. But all the stars and the mountains and oceans and galaxies and everything were nothing compared to how much God loved his children. He would move heaven and earth to be near them, always. Whatever happened, whatever it cost him, he would always love them. And so it was that the wonderful love story began. And then you go into the terrible lie. And I don't know if I should read them.
No, I hope you will read it. But why don't you read
the end of the book?
Why don't you go to the end, yeah. Let's see the unity.
Right at the end.
That should be a little bit before the end.
I don't know if you'll get that. Well, it ends with Revelation.
Right, it's one of them.
Okay, shall I just...
Yeah, because we have the...
Shall I just read...
yeah. Well,
Well, it's the dream of heaven.
yeah.
Okay. John was one of Jesus' helpers. He was old now and living on an island, which might sound nice, except it was a prison. The leaders put him there to stop him from talking about Jesus. But I'm sure you don't think a little thing, like being in a cell, in a prison, on an island in the middle of an ocean, could stop God's plan, do you? One morning Jesus appeared right there in John's cell. Jesus' eyes were bright, shining like the sun. I'm going to show you a secret, John, Jesus said, about when I come back. His voice was like the sound of rushing waters. Write down what you see so God's children can read it and wait with happy excitement. Then Jesus gave John a beautiful dream, except John was wide awake, and what he saw was real, and one day it would all come true. I see a throne, and on the throne is a king, and the king is Jesus. All around the throne people are bowing down, they are giving him their treasures. There are loud cheers and clapping and bright laughter like 1,000 waterfalls, and everyone bursts out singing a new song. This is our King, the Lamb who died, so we don't have to, our rescuer. All honor and glory forever and ever. And every creature everywhere, in heaven and on earth, and under the earth, and in the sea, joins in. And then from all around, a wide, immense, beautiful silence. And I see Satan, God's horrible enemy, thrown down, defeated. I see a sparkling city shimmering in the sky, glittering, glowing, coming down from heaven and from the sky. Heaven is coming down to earth. God's city is beautiful, walls of topaz, jasper, sapphire. White streets paved with gold, gleaming pearl gates that are never locked shut. Where is the sun? Where is the moon? They aren't needed anymore. God is all the light people need. No more darkness, no more night. And the king says, look, God and his children are together again. No more running away or hiding. No more crying or being lonely or afraid. No more being sick or dying. Because all those things are gone. Yes, they're gone forever. Everything sad has come untrue. And see, I have wiped away every tear from every eye. And then a deep, beautiful voice that sounded like thunder in the sky said, look, I'm making everything new. It was hard to squeeze all John saw into words and fit it onto a page and cram it into a book. All the words on all the pages of all the books in all the world would never be enough. I'm the beginning, Jesus said, and the ending. One day, John knew, heaven would come down and make God's broken world, and mend God's broken world and make it our true, perfect home once again. And he knew in some mysterious way that would be hard to explain that everything was going to be more wonderful, for once had to be so sad. And he knew that the ending of the story was going to be so great, it would make all the sadness and tears and everything seem like just a shadow that is chased away by the morning sun. I'm on my way, said Jesus. I'll be there soon. John came to the end of his book, but he didn't write the end, because of course that's how the story's finished, and this one's not over yet. So instead he wrote, come quickly, Jesus, which perhaps is really just another way of saying, to be continued.
You mentioned that upstairs. You have the arc, you have, the whole story, you have a very happy ending, but it's not the ending. If you did the Moses part of the storybook, it would just be Old Testament. I mean, you're getting a cliffhanger.
Yes, and I love doing, part of this book that's so fun is in the Old Testament you're doing cliffhanger the whole time.
Yeah.
So you're constantly saying, yes, but there's someone else, like when Isaac is born, or when it was Abraham and Isaac when he sacrificed his son. At the end of that story, they've got the ram in the bush and everything like that. As they sat there in the mountaintop watching the embers of fire die in the cool night air, the stars above them sparkling the velvet sky, God helped Abraham and Isaac understand something. God wanted his people to live, not die. God wanted to rescue his people, not punish them. But they must trust him. One day, someone will be born into your family, God promised them, and he will bring happiness to the whole world. God was getting ready to give the world a wonderful present. It would be God's way to tell his people, I love you. Many years later, another son would climb another hill, carrying wood on his back. Like Isaac, he would trust his father and do what his father asked. He wouldn't struggle or run away. Who was he? God's son, his only son. the Son loved, the Lamb of God. So at the end of every Old Testament story, you have a bit of that.
So do you cringe when you hear people refer to the Bible as God's instruction manual?
Because I grew up in a Christian home, and I was a Christian since I was 4, but for some reason I really thought, when I read the story of David and Goliath, or Daniel, Dare to be a Daniel, as that song used to sing, Dare to be a Daniel, I'd be like, I kept imagining being tortured somewhere. Like I was about 8 and imagining being tortured, and I'm thinking, I'm not as brave as Daniel. And so all that would happen is I'd be listening to these stories, I'd be feeling guilty and despair, because I knew I wasn't that good. I couldn't keep the rules. And so in writing this book, I really wanted to be careful that I didn't distill down into a moral lesson every story of the Bible and make it all about us and what we're supposed to be doing. Because if it was about us and what we can do, we would never have needed a rescuer. So my feeling was, what I really wanted to do was paint a portrait of Jesus in this book, so that with the prayer that children could meet him and know him in a way that would get them to the real Bible. Because this is, of course, it's not a Bible, it's a storybook, and it's a retelling, and it's not a translation. But it's a way, the Bible is an adult book, so for children you've got to distill it down. You've got to almost think of it, you've got to translate it into a language children can understand. So it's a translation of a different sort. But it's not complete by any means, it's just a way, because it's grace that changes your heart, not rules. And I think once children, or once any of us know that love and that grace, then our hearts are changing inside out.
It's important to remember that, we're children also.
Yeah.
I mean, folks of the age of you and me. Questions?
You find yourself getting a lot of theological backlash from adults who see your books as not like the Bible that they knew?
Yes, I've had, this is the thing, on Amazon I think there are 110 reviews, and there might be 2 that are really negative. Of course, which ones do I listen to? It's just very human nature. But yes, so there are people who seem to forget that it's not a little Bible, and it's not a translation, and it is a storybook. And because of that, then they have criticism. And the truth is, I couldn't include everything. I had to choose between different stories, and just by the very nature of it, it's not the Bible, so it's going to be distorted because it's not the full Bible. But you can, it's making it accessible to children. And I also think some people, if they get a sense that you're preaching grace, Marvin Lloyd Jones said this, if you preach grace, you'll always have the backlash. And I'm not comparing myself to Marvin Lloyd Jones, but I think there's something about grace that offends people, because you don't want to think there's nothing you can do. And I think some people assume because it's all about grace that you're actually saying, so live whatever you like, be as evil as you like. I think they assume I'm saying that, which I definitely am not saying. And I don't think children see it that way, But I think you should expect that kind of thing if you're taking any kind of a risk. And it's risky to do the children's Bible, because you're going to miss stuff out, and people are, I don't think it should be seen as it needs to be pre-evangelist, it should be used as a way to get to the real Bible.
I want to thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you for having me.
I know a lot of kids who love your books, and that's the first introduction that I've had to your work. Very interesting. I love it. So I have a question. I didn't realize that you've been publishing for a while, and so you have a good experience in what's out there. And you know that there are a lot of terrible children's books. Mm-hmm. What is your take on censorship in children's literature? Like what's being put in libraries, what's being taught, or even read at home? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. As you can see, my sort of books, they haven't really been censored yet. I think you come across that when you're writing for older, right? I don't know. That's a tricky one. I don't know enough to make. My feeling is sometimes we're more frightened of the written word than we need to be. And for me, Harry Potter is a great story, and it talks about, it's got good and evil. To me, it's a great story. I don't really understand why. I do understand why some people find it offensive. writers because it's about, things that we should take seriously. But I find that book a lot more helpful than some other books, that pass through fine. So I think sometimes we miss the real power of a book, by, fear or something. But obviously I don't really know. Sorry.
When you were talking about kind of getting rid of your ego as a writer and looking at the bigger picture of the audience and life of the audience, it's a little easier to see for me and maybe for you also what that looks like when you're writing for children, because there's this whole idea of the book aesthetically and the illustrations and all that. But do you have any idea about what that means when you're writing for an adult audience?
That's a great question. I think maybe it's the same in the sense that really your job is to entertain the reader, and in a way that's a service you're performing. It's not a self-indulgent. You see, you can be very self-indulgent and be very taken up with your turn of phrase and such a lovely paragraph, but it might not be telling the story. And in a way, it's in the way. And really, we all know when we're reading a book and it's like losing the plot, you're like impatient because actually it's not telling the story, it's not being generous to you. And I think that's probably true of any kind of writing, that if the main thing is to it's not asking yourself all the time, am I a good writer, but asking, am I telling a good story? And that will get rid of that self-indulgent stuff that, really can make a book not work,
Yeah, film also, if you're watching a movie and you suddenly start thinking, this is brilliant camera work, then the director is not really doing the job.
Yes, that's so true, isn't it? Yeah, and I know in writing, if you start thinking, oh, this is really clever, this is very clever, then you're out of the story, aren't you? So, but it's a constant struggle. I find that a constant. The other thing that's helpful, with writing, with any creative thing, where you're having to be involved also in promoting, you can't, it'd be lovely if you could just write and then people would find your books. I used to think like that, because I thought that's humble. I'm just writing and people find my books or they weren't, And then there's the older lady who gave me talking to, because this book was not taken by Barnes & Noble, which basically means it didn't get anywhere, hardly. In England it did great, but here it wasn't taken. And it really threw me off. I had lunch with her. This kind friend got me to talk to her. She's been in the industry forever, and the first thing she said was, don't take anything personally in this business, it just is bizarre business, publishing. The second thing she said was, if Norman Mailer, he was alive at the time, has to hire 2 people to keep his name at the top of everyone's radar, what makes you think you don't have to market your book? Because then suddenly she made me realise it's arrogant. If you're writing a story, part of your job is to make sure people know about it, and that helped me, because as long as I thought it was all about me and my game and building my game and pushing myself forward, I couldn't work out how that fitted with laying down your life and all that. It seemed very. But then I realised it's not about that. Actually, it's the reverse. The ego within me thinking I can't do it, it's too pushy. If I get rid of my ego, then I'm thinking, actually, this book, I should get it out, and I'm just going to tell people about it. So it's all these tricks in your head. Yes.
You said that you kind of, when you're publishing or getting out of it, you said you kind of wrote yourself off. How did you get beyond that point where you actually did start to believe that you could write? And I guess I'm asking how you think it was a good idea to start in publishing and then go to a writer to learn that stuff, or would it have been better to just like done with writing?
Well, yeah, if it had been up to me, I think I would have thought, no, I should just start writing. I'm a writer, I should. But now I look back on the route I took, and I studied art history, I was an art director in publishing as well as an editor. All these things are feeding into doing books like this. I'm very visual and it helps a lot. I think the thing is you can't second guess the route to what you're doing. It's all about timing, I think. And in our scheme of things, we think in quantity, don't we? We think, it'd be better if you started at 20 and then you'd have much more time. But I think the thing is, in God's economy, He's doing all kinds of things with you, and I wasn't ready, I guess, and when I left it was just exactly the right time. And as far as, so I think what I'm saying is to encourage you that it'll happen. It may not happen in your time frame, but it'll happen better than you expect, and you'll be more surprised. And I think the main thing is to just do the next thing that God is asking you to do, and not let your dream die. Like, I kept a file of things that I was writing. I didn't know what I was writing, what I'd be doing, but I kept files, kind of it's like a faith thing, you know. And I think the thing that took me from thinking I couldn't write to writing was actually doing it, and having evidence outside of my own head that contradicted what my head was telling me. But that's my biggest struggle, constantly with my head. And I think that's the thing, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness at the same time, if it's not, you know. And my strength is my imagination, but that's also my terrible weakness, because I've got all these people in my head telling me why I can't do it, you know. I don't know if anyone's read Bird by Bird by Sam Lamott. Really good book on life and writing. And she talks about these dysfunctional relatives who every time you sit down to write, they draw their chairs up behind you and start telling you why you're dreadful, that's not funny, that's far too long, who do you call yourself a writer? And you've got all these people, and she says you have to shrink them down, put them in a jam jar, put the lid on, and just watch them going. And then you can write. So there are all these things. That's my biggest challenge, is the thoughts. And so I constantly have to it's taking every thought captive. So that was what kept me from writing, and it's what tries to keep me from writing now. And, you know, it can't work quite so well with picture books because I've done enough. But now those voices are telling me, you can't possibly write older than picture books. You know, there are all these ways that those voices will stop you, try and stop you. So I quite like the idea of just shrinking them down, realizing that's actually very normal for writers who aren't normal, but any creative person, you know.
I've asked Dr. Olasky this before about writing, so I'll ask you too. As I think about starting to write, possibly for men, what I'd love to do, I'm worried that as a Christian worldview, would kind of disqualify me from the competition between, you know, more liberal writers. This is a cutthroat city. This is what I hear. So Dr. Olasky says that it really gives us an edge, a competitive edge, to have a different worldview, different way of seeing the world. But I'm just wondering what your experiences were as a Christian in a secular publishing company, if that, in a sense, gave you an extra.
Yeah, that's a great.
All about words, you know.
Well, I think that the first thing that comes to mind is what I said earlier about how it keeps me trapped as a Christian. I think that gives you a great grounding, knowing that you're working for the, you know, that why you're doing what you're doing, and keep reminding yourself, not that it's only Christians who think that way, but I think it's knowing that, you know, God's called us to do what we're, our little portion. That helps me keep from going off. But I think, I was talking about this earlier, I think as a Christian, the effect of forgiveness, redemption, hope and joy in our lives are so immense and so close to us that we may not know how that affects us. You know what I mean? It's part of us. Our whole lives would be transformed. And I sort of feel like my writing comes out of that place. So I can't really separate, you know, what's doing what. I just know when I'm writing, that's where it comes from. So I've come to realise that is what God's calling me to do. I don't have to. I thought at dinner that when I did my first big book, I tried to add a prayer into it to be more Christian. And that really, it was for me. I did that. It was not for the reader, because it was very confusing. It was a bedtime book and then a prayer. So the publisher said, "Sister, do you want this prayer?" And I went, "Yes, I want this prayer." And you know, they're HarperCollins, and I'm thinking, "Yes, I want this prayer." And they said, "Well, we understand this, but it is a bedtime book, so we can't really take it because we have to call it a prayer book." And then you can't just have a prayer and not tell people. And I mean, terrible temptation, I don't think it is, and you know, this is where I got to understand. Fortunately, you know, I was like bowing down to like the Babylon stories, and you know, and then my dad was with me, and he said, "Well, remember what Emily Dickinson said: tell the whole of the truth, but tell it slant." And I realised, for me, I was trying to do everything, and the result being nothing. And it was my insecurity like it. I was frightened somehow that God would be, I thought God would be more pleased with this book than he would be with this book. That I could ask him to help me with this book, but I couldn't ask him to help me with this book. Because I don't know if you do that, but I think we tend to compartmentalize so much that I can really believe that God would want me to do this, but I don't know. How does he want me to do this? You know? And then I realised it's that thing of God's creation is all around us. It's so beautiful, but it's not got Bible verses on a tree. But a tree is glorifying God by being a tree. And I can glorify God by being fully myself, and the way I do that is by keeping in fellowship with him and keep submitting my thoughts and keep inviting him, asking him to give me the stories I'm meant to be telling, but not over spiritualize it, because I think God's in everything we're doing if we're trusting him. So I sometimes think you don't have to worry, you'll be the change. You'll be different because you're just, And also, someone said you should write the thing that only you can write. If you're writing something someone else can write, better stop because they'll be better. Much better. So that's helped me. You just have to write what you're meant to write. And if you find yourself in the middle of writing something that sounds like someone else, you've probably gone off,
I can tell you when it comes to, let's say, dissertations and theses that people are writing, students who have a conventional outlook, let's say a conventionally secular liberal outlook, have to try to find some tiny facet of the subject that hasn't already been written about in a dissertation or thesis, because a lot of the good stuff has already been taken. Now, coming from a Christian perspective, a lot of the good stuff hasn't been taken because there haven't been that many people writing there. So you can actually get bigger bites of something and much more interesting and colorful and fun stuff to do, because it just has not been taken. It's there. So you mentioned upstairs when you look at a tree, you don't start thinking, well, is that a Christian tree or a non-Christian tree?
And that C.S. Lewis quote about you don't have either a Christian cookery book or a non-Christian cookery book, you have a good cookery book or a bad cookery book. So I think by being excellent in what you do is honouring God right there. I mean, there are moments when you can choose. I have a conscious choice, like when I'm writing a picture book and I'm thinking of this 6-year-old boy and everything, and I can make jokes and make people laugh. Sometimes I have a choice where I think, okay, what am I really telling children here? Like, am I telling them, like I'm right now working on a book about work, am I telling them a job is just to get money? What am I telling them? Now, you have to be careful you're not going to suddenly stop doing propaganda and have some, because that then destroys the truth in the story. But sometimes I do have a moment where I'll think, the responsibility is what you're doing. And maybe that's especially true with children's books. You could make them laugh, but only telling them the truth. So, I think the thing is, I don't know what I'm doing. I just feel like if you keep with, making yourself laugh and making a good story, it works, somehow. I'm working with good editors as well.
One thing that I noticed a lot, and I love reading. I love reading everything, especially good stories. And the more I read more current things, the more I tend to think that we're losing the art of storytelling. And I find myself constantly going back to like classics and just things that have been written, several generations ago. And there seems to be something lacking in what we're reading now. And I'm just curious as to your. Do you think that we are losing the art of storytelling?
Well, I don't know if I know, but I think I'm with you that I used to get the New Yorker, which I love, but I sometimes reading that fiction thinking, why aren't I reading Dickens? I'd much prefer to be reading. I should be reading Dickens or Jane Austen. Why am I reading this? So I feel that way, that sometimes there's a richness in those books that we don't have. But I'm no expert in fiction or anything. I mean, in terms of children's books, I think there are some great. Actually, I think children's books have been amazing. J.K. Rowling. I mean, there's some great writers now who are going into children's books more, because children's books are now. Madeleine L'Engle always used to say she just wrote books, she didn't write children's books. And if she had something too hard to say, she'd write a children's. she'd do it for children if adults couldn't hear it, you know. So, which I love. It's like you just write the book, the story, the book has to be a certain book. It will be a book. And you don't necessarily call it a children's book or not, you just write the story. That's not a very good answer to your question. But I think actually the film is telling the story better these days, right?
You have another book there.
Yes.
Show us that.
This is the follow-up to this manual. This is How to Get Married by Me the Bride. So this one comes out in March. All the people you shouldn't marry, people you could marry.
Can you give us a little preview?
What did you say?
Very relevant.
When you want to get married, first you have to find someone you can marry. You can marry your best friend, or your teacher, or your pet, and sometimes you can marry a flower. You can marry someone who's just like you, someone who isn't. Someone who lives near your house, or someone who doesn't. Actually, you can marry anyone you like, except they need to like you back. When you're choosing a husband or a wife, you have to be on your best behaviour. You can't be mean, you have to be nice. For instance, no one will marry you if you gobble up all their candy and never offer them any. Or if you pick your nose in front of them, or pinch them, and you shouldn't yawn when they're talking to you, or you'll hurt their feelings, and they won't want to see you ever again. Basically, no one will marry you if you wear old pyjamas and slippers in the middle of the day. You don't ever take a bath. You don't ever brush your hair and it looks like a bird's nest back there. You dribble your dinner down your chin. Usually, you're not allowed to marry lots of people at once. Except sometimes you are. See, now you see, right, if you're thinking about this book as an adult, you'll have lots of problems for children. I'm sure there's going to be someone saying I'm proposing, you know. And never, ever get married when it's dark, because you won't be able to see and you might marry the wrong person. Not everyone is good to marry. If you marry a cat, for instance, you have to let him lick your face. If you marry a teacher, she could make you do homework instead of watch TV. If you marry a noisy shouting person, he will give you a headache. And if you marry a firefighter, you have to let him practice on you and not say, cut it out. Here's who else you probably shouldn't marry. Someone too big or they won't fit in your house. Someone too small or you might squash your husband by mistake. Someone who only eats bugs. Yeah. Sometimes you have to search for the right person and travel far and wide until you find them. And sometimes you just have to sit quietly and wait for someone. And when you find your own true love, you must ask their permission. Can I marry you, please? You say. Yes, please, they say. And you say thanks very much. And do your best courtesy or bow and kneel down and give them a golden ring or your favourite toy or a bite of your cookie. And that means you're allowed to get married. And from now on you say, sweetheart, where are you, my sweetheart? And my honey darling, look at me, my honey. And stuff like that. So everyone knows they're yours and don't try and marry them too. Next you send out all the invitations so your friends can come and see you and get married. You must write a beautiful wedding language. Please come to our wedding because we kindly request the pleasure of your company. There will be candy. And you put RSVP at the end, which is French, and means please say yes, please, thank you. Next you need to find a special wedding place. Here are the places you could get married. A big white tent, a palace, up a tree, in the middle of the stairs, or in your playroom. It's very important to wear something beautiful for the wedding. For example, you could wear a pure white dress like the moon, some shining armour, a moustache, some wings if you're a fairy bride. And it's nice if you put something romantic on top of your head, like a long veil, for instance. Here's what else could go on your head. A crown, a wig, some ears in case you're marrying a rabbit. Your friends and sisters and pets and toys and grandma should all come to see your wedding in their best outfits. And when the music starts, everyone has to stop whatever they're doing and look at you. And you walk down the aisle, which means you go extra slowly down a long path and not fall over. Next you stand very still and look right in each other's faces and you say, I do. And they say, I do too. And then someone with an important voice says, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And that means you are married. Now you throw a big bunch of flowers at people's heads. It's called the bouquet, and whoever it hits has to get married next. Everyone shouts and jumps up in the air and throws snow at you, except it's confetti and it's only pretend. And your guests have to hand over tons of presents and give you a big cake with lots of frosting on it and sing you a wedding song and be so happy they can cry. and your smile is nearly jumping off your face. And then here's what you have to do next. Let everyone take your picture, open all the presents, eat up all the cake, and dance a little wedding dance. And now you are married people, so you have to yell hooray, and then do some cartwheels for joy. Here's what else married people have to do: get some children, maybe, and some pets, definitely. Live in a house on a hill by a little stream. Watch the sun go down. Go along together, holding hands. Live happily ever after the end. Except first you have to say goodbye to your guests. Goodbye, guests, you must say. Then you wave and skip all the way home and hold your daddy's hand and give him a bite of your cake and show him your presents and tell him all about your very completely lovely, happy ever after wedding. It's very nice audience. Very good.
What's a good writing day for you?
A good writing day is when I write. I find that I can write about 2 to 3 hours. If I do that in the day, it's good. If I don't do that, then I just have this edgy feeling that I haven't worked, which isn't true, because there's a lot more to the job than just the writing, it's the promoting and the website and all that. But a good day is if I go on a run, do some writing, and meet. Usually, I love going to movies. I think that's a great. I don't know if you find that, but it's a great thing to do after writing all day, because you don't have to. It's not theatre. Theatre's too wordy, you know.
You start early?
I used to do, yeah. But I'm always looking at the perfect schedule. I don't know if you are too, but I'm always looking for the perfect notebook, perfect system, perfect schedule. And I kind of don't really know. But I've learned that it's important to show up, and I share this with any of you who are writers, that showing up every day is very important, or at least regularly. Because a publisher described it as, if you think you're going to write when you write for like 9 hours a day, you won't do it. It'll be too much, because you take a deep breath and, it's like, I'm going to climb this mountain, you've got to put on all your gear, and it's a great huge mountain, you've got all your gear on, and then you've got all this gear, and you're writing, so you keep writing, you're exhausted, and then you can't bear it, so you don't go back for 4 days. But then, to get back into it, you've got to put the gear on again, climb the mountain. So, much better if you just do 10 minutes than do nothing. And I think what's helped me is to think, I'll share this because this is helpful. I heard Linda Sue Park, the Newbery Award-winning novelist, you may have read her. She was asked by a child in a panel. The child said, "What made you want to write novels?" And she went, "Oh no, I don't write novels. I was too scared I couldn't write novels. I write 2 pages a day." And that, to me, has been a life rock. It's like, whenever I start saying to myself, I've got to write whatever it is, fill in the blank, whatever you might be doing a paper presentation, whatever you put in that space, just remember, I'm not doing that, I'm writing 2 pages a day, whatever it is you have to do. Because then pretty soon, those 2 pages add up, and before you know it, you'll have something that you never thought you could do. So, again, it's another trick. If anything I can share with you, it's a trick, playing tricks with your head, and really watching what you're saying to yourself. So, taking yourself in hand. I think Martin Olasky said that in Spiritual Depression, that there's a difference between listening to yourself and talking to yourself. You wake up in the morning and you're already talking to yourself. There's a stuff coming at you. And like the psalmist, you have to address yourself and take yourself in hand and say, "Why are you downcast in myself? I will put my trust in God." Instead of just listening all the time to all this stuff, just take yourself in hand.
I interviewed Brett Lott not too long ago, and he said that every book or every novel that he writes has a soundtrack. And I'm wondering how you use music.
That's really, I love that. Yeah, I do. I use music. Yes, I do use kind of with a picture book, I often have to have music that's kind of, for some reason, I just need really happy kind of music that I get from iTunes, or that I've just heard on some show or something, and I make a playlist that I get to hear so much that I don't hear it, and it just gives me an atmosphere, and that keeps me excited about what I'm doing. Now, when it comes to actually writing something rhythm, and I can't have any music, but most of the time I will put a playlist on that keeps me going. And I actually, strangely enough, with the Jesus Storybook Bible, I had one soundtrack that I was listening to all the time, and I don't really feel I should say which one it was, because I'll get in trouble, but it was Wicked. Which is totally random. But it was, again, there's some songs, that music is so amazing, and there are some songs in there that were so moving, that I found very moving. and I would play it over and over and over, it's just a soundtrack, and so it becomes invisible. So you're not listening to the music, you're not listening to the words, but it gives especially if you're in a cafe, you need music, otherwise you can hear that.
You write on a laptop?
Yeah.
And you don't get disgusted and throw away a file, right? Or do you?
No, I always
No,
keep
you
it.
always keep it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know what can
Yeah, I mean, I like when I'm working on all the pieces, like with the pieces through the Bible, I came to a point when I consolidate, so I do my notes on maybe, but then I put them in another file where it was like I didn't use it to the pieces through the Bible and maybe it'd be something else. But sometimes you just have to hear it out because there's too many options. That's something that deciding is hard.
You've mentioned your nieces and nephews, and so I assume that it's kids that you know that influence you, right? But have you ever written a book with one little kid in mind that you thought would be saying this, like the
Yes.
brother?
Well, this book totally was the voice of my niece Ellie
Okay.
and her brother Jonathan. So, she's now 10 and he's 7, so they're much older than they were when I was writing this. But yeah, that voice is in my head of how she would say it. Now she's older, so I don't pray, and what we're like when we're looking for the Lord to help us do something, and then He does it for us. It's easy to get to be just dependent on Him,
So what do you do when you go to school?
Well, what's so nice is I'm going to the 5-year-old class, so I just sit there on one of those little chairs, and they don't mind, they just play around, and I don't know what they think if I'm some retarded adult, and I'm sitting through their maths lesson, and I I've never liked maths, and so I'm listening to this teacher teaching 5-year-olds last week, and I'm sitting there thinking, I need to do that. Maths could be quite fun, stuff like that. But what I'm really trying to do is get them used to me and just overhear how they say things, because it's all how they construct sentences, and I'm not really necessarily looking to copy anything, but I need to be around how they say things. And I've actually asked the teachers to do a project where they ask children, what is a job, how do you get a job, because I'm doing this book on work, and I know they're going to come up with something outrageous that I never even thought of, So I think it keeps you in touch with children,
So your book on marriage, book was some of that come about that way in school?
Not so much. Well, I wasn't going to school at that point, but I was around my nieces and nephews. And there's also a side where you can trust that you have it in you as well. You know what I mean? So I think if I thought I only could get to write if I was around children, I would be out and be at school all the time. But I also think you need to trust that also. I'm sort of channeling a 6-year-old child inside. It's kind of weird. That sounds weird, but I can hear her voice. So. Yeah.
I was wondering if you would be willing to read just the fall and then redemption in your
Yeah. So we've just had that, He would move heaven and earth, and so it was that the wonderful life story began. And the terrible lie, Adam and Eve did everything from Genesis 2. Adam and Eve lived happily together in their beautiful new home, and everything was perfect for a while, until the day when everything went wrong. God had a horrible enemy. His name was Satan. Satan had once been the most beautiful angel, but he didn't want to be just an angel. He wanted to be God. He grew proud and evil and full of hate, and God had to send him out of heaven. Satan was seething with anger and looking for a way to hurt God. He wanted to stop God's plan, stop this love story right there. So he disguised himself as a snake and waited in the garden. Now God had given Adam and Eve only one rule. Don't eat the fruit on that tree, God told them, because if you do, you'll think you know everything. You'll stop trusting me, and then death and sadness and tears will come. You see, God knew if they ate the fruit, they would think they didn't need him, and they would try to make themselves happy without him. But God knew there was no such thing as happiness without him, and life without him wouldn't be life at all. As soon as the snake saw his chance, he slithered silently up to Eve. Does God really love you? The serpent whispered. If he does, why won't he let you eat the nice, juicy, delicious fruit? Or you? Perhaps God doesn't want to make you happy. The snake's words hissed into her ears and sunk down deep into her heart like poison. Does God love me? Eve wondered. Suddenly she didn't know anymore. Just trust me, the serpent whispered in the shadows. Where are you? God called. Hiding, Adam said. We're afraid of you. Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat? God asked them. Adam said, Eve made me do it. What have you done? God asked. Eve said, the serpent made me do it. And terrible pain came into God's heart. The children hadn't just broken the one rule. They had broken God's heart. They had broken their wonderful relationship with him. And now he knew everything else would break. God's creation would start to unravel and come undone and go wrong. From now on, everything would die, even though it was all supposed to last forever. You see, sin had come into God's perfect world and it would never leave. God's children would be always running away from him and hiding in the dark. Their hearts would break now and never work properly again. God couldn't let his children live forever, not in such pain, not without him. There was only one way to protect them. You will have to leave the garden now, God told his children, his eyes filling with tears. This is no longer your true home. It's not the place for you anymore. But before they left the garden, God made clothes for his children to cover them. He gently clothed them, and then he sent them away on a long, long journey, out of the garden, out of their home. While in another story, it would all be over, and that would have been the end. But not in this story. God loved his children too much to let the story end there. Even though he knew he would suffer, God had a plan, a magnificent dream. One day, he would get his children back. One day, he would make the world their perfect home again. And one day, he would wipe away every tear. The sun stopped shining. The crucifixion from Matthew 27, Mark 15, Luke 23, and John 19. So you're a king, are you? The Roman soldiers jeered. Then you'll need a crown and a robe. They gave Jesus a crown made out of thorns, and put a purple robe on him, and pretended to bow down to him. Your Majesty, they said. Then they whipped him, and spat on him. They didn't understand that this was the Prince of Life, the King of heaven and earth who had come to rescue them. The soldiers made him a sign, our King, and nailed it to a wooden cross. They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they were going to kill him the way criminals were killed. They nailed Jesus to the cross. Father, forgive them, Jesus gasped. They don't understand what they're doing. You say you've come to rescue us, he shouted, but you can't even rescue yourself. But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A legion of angels would have flown to his side if he'd called. If you were really the Son of God, you could just climb down off that cross, they said. And of course they were right. Jesus could have just climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop, like when he healed that little girl and stilled the storm and fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. Papa, Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. Papa, where are you? Don't leave me. And for the first time, and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just a horrible, endless silence. God didn't answer. He turned away from his boy. Tears rolled down Jesus' face, the face of the one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun could not shine. The earth trembled and quaked. The great mountains shook. Rocks split in two, until it seemed that the whole world would break, that creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own Son instead of his people. It was the only way God could destroy sin and not destroy his children, whose hearts were filled with sin. Then Jesus shouted in a loud voice, "It is finished." And it was. He had done it. Jesus had rescued the whole world. "Father," Jesus cried, "I give you my life." And with a great sigh, he let himself die. Strange clouds and shadows filled the sky, purple, orange, black, like a bruise. Jesus' friends gently carried Jesus. They laid Jesus in a new tomb, carved out of rock. How could Jesus die? What had gone wrong? What did it mean? They didn't know anything anymore, except they did know that their hearts were breaking. That's the end of Jesus, the leaders said. But just as usual, they sent strong soldiers to guard the tomb. They hauled a huge stone in front of the door of the tomb so that no one could get in or out. Just read the resurrection. God's wonderful surprise. Jesus' friends were sad. They would never see their best friend again. How could this happen? Wasn't Jesus the rescuer, the king God had promised? It wasn't supposed to end like this. Yes, but whoever said anything about the end? Just before sunrise on the third day, God sent an earthquake and an angel from heaven. When the guards saw the angel, they fell down with fright. The angel rolled the stone away, sat on top of it, and waited. At the first glimmer of dawn, Mary Magdalene and other women headed to the tomb to wash Jesus' body. The early morning sun slanted through the ancient olive trees, drops of dew glittering on leaves and grasses, little tears everywhere. The friends walked quietly along the hilly path through the olive groves until they reached the tomb, and immediately noticed something odd. It was wide open. They peered through the opening into the darkness, into the tomb. But wait, Jesus' body was gone. And something else. A shining man was there with clothes made from lightning. Don't be scared, the angel said, but they couldn't help it. They screamed anyway. The angel asked them, "What are you doing here? This is a tomb, and tombs are for dead people." The women couldn't speak. "Jesus isn't dead anymore," he said. "He's alive again." And their hearts leapt. And then the angel laughed with such gladness that they felt for a moment as if they had woken from a nightmare. The other women rushed home, but Mary stayed behind. How could it be true? Jesus was definitely dead. How could he be alive? Just then, Mary heard someone else in the garden. Perhaps it's the gardener, she thought. He'll know where Jesus' body is. "I don't know where Jesus is," Mary said urgently. "I can't find him." But it was all right. Jesus knew where she was, and he had found her. Mary. Only one person said her name like that. She could hear her heart thumping. She turned around. She could just make out a figure. She shaded her eyes to see and thought she was dreaming, but she wasn't dreaming. She was seeing Jesus. Mary fell to the ground. Sudden tears filled her eyes, and great sobs shook her whole body. And all she wanted in that moment was to cling to Jesus and never let him go. "You'll be able to hold on to me later, Mary," Jesus said gently, "and always be close to me. But now, go and tell the others that I'm alive." Mary ran and ran all the way to the city. She had never run so fast or so far in all her life. She felt she could run forever. She didn't even feel like her feet touched the ground. The sun seemed to be dancing and gleaming and bounding across the sky, racing with her and shining brighter than she could ever remember in the clear, fresh air. And it seemed to her that morning as she ran, almost as if the whole world had been made anew, almost as if the whole world would sing for joy. The trees, tiny sounds in the grass, the birds, her heart. Was God really making everything sad come untrue? Was he making even death come untrue? She couldn't wait to tell Jesus' friends. They won't believe it, she laughed. She was right, of course.
With clothes made from lightning. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Any questions right now? We have time for maybe one. Jenner?
How involved were you in the illustration process?
Actually, that's great you asked that, because I was actually starting to feel like I need to make an emphasis that in the type of books I do, the illustrator is extremely, hugely important. And with these books, this book I was very involved because it was a collaboration, which means, you come up with the ideas. I shared my side of the story, but if Sue was here, she'd share how she came up with the ideas, and together we did it together. I mean, I wrote the story, but then she did her illustrations. And then when she was sketching, I would sit with her, and if we both were laughing hysterically, we knew it was right. Same with my text. I would try my text out on her, and if she laughed hysterically, I knew it was right. And I remember I was reading about class to her, and I started saying, I wonder, should I make her nice? Because I was worrying, oh dear, 4 children. And she was like, no, I want her to be bad. So I just let myself go with her being bad. So I'm involved. In some books, you can get very involved. In this book, I didn't really meet Jago. I've never met him. But I was involved in terms of giving comments, and I actually introduced the publisher to Jago because I kept a file of my favourite illustrators. So I was involved in a less direct way. And I think with picture books, the illustrations are like the front door. If the illustrations aren't right, no one can pick your book up. So the illustrator is extremely important, and you're really blessed if you get a good one. But you're not always in control of that. And in fact, mostly you're not. But if you're with a good publisher who wants to build a relationship with you, and you're someone who has a sense about this, then I think they're very respectful and they want you to be happy. So, but I know it varies a lot depending who you work with. Yeah. And some illustrators really like you to have a say, and others don't. So, which I understand. You don't want some pesky writer telling you what you're supposed to be doing. But I think the best picture book is when it's like I was saying, the ego is out of the way and you're both about the book, because then you can let go of an illustration or a piece of text and you're making the book much better. And as a friend of mine says, a publisher says, 1 + 1 equals more than 2 in a picture book. So if you're collaborating, you do a better book, but that's quite rare to be able to do that. Thank you.
So that's a book that first parents read to children. When children are a little older, they read themselves when they're doing it. And then you're thinking of an audio.
Yes, we're talking about an audio for this one. And that, again, that's like illustration. You've got to choose the right voice. So it's all these decisions are quite stressful, and that's where I have to that's where I feel like you can really give it an order. Do your best and do everything you can do, and you just keep praying that God will choose His choice. Because I'm so conscious if you got the wrong reader, it could almost harm the book.
And why wouldn't you do that?
Because that's so nice. But you know what? I feel like I'm not trained. Well, I'm just not. I feel like I'm not trained. So over 44 stories it gets monotonous, and I know with a really good reader, it's like 1 + 1 equals more than 2. You know what I mean? That reader can bring a whole other level. Now, of course, if I'm given the choice of a really bad voiceover person, I'll do it. But I also, like I said, it's a lot of work, and I'm aware that you could get very monotonous and high pitched, and over 44 stories, someone will be like, keep your hand off. I would be. So I don't know. I would love to get a really well-trained person, but we'll see.
Okay, last question. Becca, go ahead.
What kind of stories do you like to read?
I just read The Shack. I love that. Even though that's a totally out of the blue kind of a book, but it totally blessed me. And but I also love reading Winnie the Pooh. I'm reading A. Milne's biography at the moment. I'm also reading Culture Makers. Andy Crouch.
Yeah, Culture.
Obviously, I've only just started that one because I can't remember what it's called. And then I'm also reading. I like reading all kinds of different things, but if I'm really into a longer piece, I don't really like when I was reading this, I couldn't read things that were fiction really, because I'm going to start comparing myself, and that's hopeless. But I do like. I think everyone says this. If you want to write, you've got to read. So I think reading, even if you're reading bad things, is good, because you realise what's not working. It's like going to see a bad movie. Makes you appreciate a good one, isn't it?
Very good. We're going to put that copy in the King's College Library. And I'll be all of it. And thank you very much.
Thank you for being such a great interested. I've gone on and on and on. I think it's going on and on. And thank you for listening.